Hi, he's Mattyman.
And he's Vannyboy. And you're listening to The Rusty Playground, a Gen X-centric podcast where we talk about everything involving the coolest generation.
Hey. This is part 2 of our Christmas Gen X extravaganza, where we bring you knowledge, facts, and farting around about the toys Generation X had growing up.
They were made with sharp edges. They were made with toxic materials. They were made with breakaway, bite-sized parts. But mostly, they were made with love.
Yep.
So try not to think about what it will be like to pass that Weeble your best friend dared you to eat. And let's jump right into our take on Christmas Toys Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. 3, 2, 1, go.
So the next one is very dear to my heart. If you've listened to our other, well, at least our previous podcast from this one, you may be 50 years in the future listening to this thinking, well, Vannyboy, Mattyman, you guys, you've had like 17,000 of these episodes. I haven't heard all of them. So if that's the case, sorry. But this one is the Atari 2600.
I'd like an Atari 2600 system, please, and everything that goes with it.
Everything? You sure want everything?
I want everything.
Now you get a new low price, up to $30 in rebate offers, and a free pack.
Is that everything?
It's not everything. You can get nearly 300 different cartridges.
300?
That's nothing.
It's something.
But it's not everything. Soon there'll be a voice module, trackball, remote control joysticks, and a computer keyboard.
It's amazing.
It's amazing, but it's not everything.
It's not everything.
Soon there'll be educational games, too.
Is that everything?
That's everything. For now.
For now?
The Atari 2600.
It's going to be a little bit more detailed because it's one of the most influential toys I ever had. I loved it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a gamer to this day. I game probably 20 hours a week, you know, if you include weekends. So basically I hang out with the family and we eat dinner. Then the kids go do their thing before bed. Then I hang out with Christina, watch TV. And then around 10 o'clock, I usually game for an hour and a half, go to bed. And then on weekends, it's just, you know, wide open at night, stay up till 4.
Yes, the Atari 2600 probably maybe not a gamer, but you continue, sir.
So it's the opposite for you, is what you're saying. Oh, yeah. That's interesting. Well, it was released on September 11th, 1977, a date which will live in, well, not infamy, but I remember it. It was the follow-up to their 1974 hit Pong, which everyone's heard of. Starting nothing short of a total revolution in the way that people thought of technology, basically bringing interactive technology into people's houses for the very first time. The Atari 2600, and bear with me, folks, there's some mind-blowing stats here that I'm going to lay on to you, but the Atari 2600 was the first home video game console that allowed people to play multiple games on their own TV as opposed to in an arcade. Came with one game, Combat, which was both terrible and great at the same time.
Honestly, though, what would you have gone to an arcade to play in 1977? I mean, pinball machines for sure.
Yeah, they still had pinball machines, but I remember playing games like, I don't know the names of them. It was just like little car racers and.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah, the one, it was just that one loop. And yeah, you had a block and it went around the loop. Yes.
And, you know, they definitely had games and arcades that I would go and play. As a kid, my grandfather would go shopping in one of the malls in Roanoke. He'd be like, "Hey, here's some quarters. Go to the arcade," and I just go to the.
Make sure you don't get diddled, okay?
Right. Make sure nobody touches your pee-pee, and in case they do, well, you'll probably use all your quarters to play the game, so you can't call me. So just deal with it in about 30 years.
Make you want to stand up and beg for buttermilk, ass like a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah. Sorry, folks, that turned dark. Anyway,
impromptu sock and coins. There you go. There's your weapon.
Yes, there you go.
All right, go ahead.
So it had Combat as the one cartridge, but it had like 20 games that were all kind of the same. But yeah, they were fun if that's all you had to do. Came with 2 controllers, which were basically just sticks with a single red button in the upper left-hand corner. Nothing real complicated. If you have an Xbox, a PlayStation, a Nintendo, or any other console between here and there, you owe a debt of gratitude to the Atari 2600. Just like today, you'd plug in the power, plug a single cable into the back of your TV, place whatever game cartridge in you wanted to play, and you're ready to go.
Oh, wait. You got to remember, you got to blow on the cartridge.
Yes.
You gotta blow the cartridge, and then you gotta take it, and you gotta take the cartridge out, reinsert the cartridge, do it 2 or 3 times.
Yes. if you used them a lot, they would, they would kind of scrape and whatever. But they still, they were pretty hardy, hardy enough that in the late 90s, when the Nintendo 64 came out, they decided to go with cartridges, and this upstart Sony company, PlayStation, decided to use compact discs because it could handle a whole lot more. And Nintendo was like, nah, we're not going to do it. They actually were going to use that technology for Nintendo. Nintendo said, nah, we're not going to do it. I don't think that's the future. And then, of course, Nintendo dominates now.
Yeah, Xerox and the mouse all over again.
Yes, it was. It really was. They just did their own thing. The top games at the time, and some of these, I guess I'll name out, and they're the ones that you play at the arcade. There's Asteroids, Space Invaders, Adventure, which was actually only on the Atari, I believe. There was Missile Command. Pitfall.
Just last night, I was lost in the jungle with Pitfall Harry, surrounded by giant scorpions and man-eating crocodiles.
Pac-Man. Frogger. Berserker, which I liked, and it was kind of creepy.
You want to play Berserk? You're on. Hey, where you going? The video arcade! You can't play Berserk at home. Now you can. Atari!
It's Berserk inside an electric maze, where robots shoot with electric rays.
Centipede. And a game I hated, and I hate to this day because it was so damn hard, Defender.
And it's up to Defender to save them. Defender, a great Atari game.
Oh, yeah. Screw that game.
Yeah. I had all of these, but Frogger. I don't exactly know why. I kind of liked Frogger. It was fun. But on the Atari, it was just, some of these things were like 2 screens, folks. So it may have been mind blowing, like, wow, this is really cool. I've been playing this game Frogger for like 20 minutes now on 1 quarter. Well, they only had 2 screens. So, all right. But as we'd mentioned on previous podcasts, the Atari 2600 was $200 when it came out, which is $960 in today's money. So that was a lot. Turns out that the games were between $20 and $30, which is now $100 to $120 today, which is
good. God, I wasn't even thinking about the games.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft.
Hey, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, by comparison, Microsoft today has Game Pass, which is like $10 a month for hundreds of games. If you go to buy a new game from it, it's basically $60 to $70, depending on what it is. Same thing with PlayStation; they're $70, and that's now. And that they just raised that like 2 years ago. Other than that, it was between 55 and 60. So, these games were $100 and $120 by comparison to today.
So basically what you're telling me is, when I'm disappointed at my mom, who had a Chevette scooter as their only car and had to drive my stepdad to work in the morning before she went to class at VCU, but she decided to go back to school. You're saying I'm the bad guy? I'm the asshole?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
No,
She's selfish as hell.
I know.
Let's just face it.
Oh, let's say I'm the whatever word you want to use.
Thanks, Boomer.
Yeah, thanks, Boomer. Ruining my fun.
Well, like I said, I was really into it. So at my peak, I had 50 games, and that's a lot. I had a red metal toolbox that I'd carry them in. And, you can do the math. That was a ton of money that between this was over like 3 years, right, that I had this thing. So it wasn't like they just went out and bought me 50 games in one time.
That'd be awesome.
Oh, I wouldn't even know. Nobody ever see me again. So that's,
yeah. Yar's Revenge. That was your favorite?
Yes.
Oh my God. We loved that one.
Loved Yar's Revenge.
Yes. Oh yeah. We were all heavily addicted.
I'm sure I'm going to put some B-roll of like the sound effects or whatever. It won't be very long.
Watch it, Yar. He has a lethal drone and some other tricks up his sleeve. Spiral. Go. Oh, good move, Yar. Now, I have a surprise for you. A Zorlon cannon. Use it, Yar. Fire again. Got him. That's revenge. Yar's revenge.
No. But I'm glad that you liked it too. It seemed like it was quite popular. I had a whole section here underneath what my notes here, folks, where I was describing this game and it got stupidly long. So I was like, all right, I'll just, I can't describe everything of this, but
me, my brother, my mom, we all played the hell out of that one game. I mean, we broke the joysticks. We had to go get the replacement part. Do you remember that at all?
Yes.
You'd break the little disc inside the joystick. If you twisted it too much.
Yeah, I think I did that a couple times.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, I know I wasn't the only one who liked Yar's Revenge. I think it was one of their biggest sellers, but it's cool that we have that shared experience, which is something that, I think in our current time period where you have 1,000 channels and you have 1 million different things on YouTube and stuff like that Gen Z and millennials in particular, or I should say millennials and Gen Z in particular, they may meet 100 people in their lives that have never heard of hardly anything they had growing up, because they'd be like, oh no, I had this or whatever. But video games, even to this day, there's so many people that have those common memories like we just had, that play, Red Dead Redemption 2 or Assassin's Creed or whatever. And they have remember that time you assassinated the Pope? Which is one thing you do in Assassin's Creed. You kill Rodrigo Borgia. Spoiler.
Okay. Well, I'm done. I'm not playing it. I'll just stick with my Grand Theft Auto 13.
Yeah, we're right. You're going to be waiting a while for that one. Anyway, I thought it was funny because the description that I had was longer than it took you to win a single round of Yar's Revenge. But the gist of it is, if you're really interested, you can look it up on YouTube. If you're a Gen X gamer, this will be funny to go back and watch a video of it and sure jar some memories. If you're a millennial, you'll find it quaint, very nice. If you're Gen Z, you'll find it amazing that someone played this for more than 10 seconds, as opposed to the hours that Matty and I and his family enjoyed playing together.
Yep. We were freaks for it.
I mean, I really can't tell you just how simple this was. One screen. It had one screen, and the only variant was this thing on the right that would go up and down, and it would kind of just change its shape each screen, and you do the same thing every time. But I don't know. It was fun.
You were shooting the blocks to get to the center.
Yes.
To get to the chewy center of the Tootsie Roll Pop. I mean, the yard thing, whatever.
Well, I guess the way to look at it was in Yar's Revenge, you were basically the aliens from Space Invaders, as they would go and they'd shoot the little blocks that were in front of you to protect you. Well, in Yar's Revenge, you were shooting the blocks to destroy the thing behind the blocks. And you had like this strip of what looked like snow, when you don't have a very good signal on TV or whatever. Everybody's seen that at some point. And you had that like right a little left of center, and that was like a safe zone. So you could go in it. If you were going to get hit, the bullets would just go past you.
But remember, there was one thing that you were not safe from when you were in that strip. Just periodically, there'd be some torpedo or missile or whatever, something floating through. If you weren't paying attention, that could hit you, even if you're in the safe zone.
Wow. I mean, it was great, folks. And, it was just saying
it was a dash. That's really what it was.
It was a dash. And then the whole description of how to play it, that's what I said. The missile coming at you was a dash, and it wasn't even really fast. The games were very, very watered down versions of the arcade games that they were based off of, whether it was, Pac-Man or whatever. The arcade version of Pac-Man had a smooth circular character with a wedge for a mouth, as we all know, and it was darting around a brightly lit maze, being chased by colorful animated ghosts. The Atari version looked like a square with the corners cut off and a maze made of brownish yellow geometric walls. And instead of eating up circles, they also were dashes.
Yes. Everything is a dash or a block. There's nothing round in Atari 2600. They can't make circles.
No. Well, I'll
it's
get to
8-bit, you know?
It not only was it 8-bit, it was very small resolution, as I'll get to here in a second. But, don't read me wrong, folks. These games were fun. As you just heard Matty and I when we realized that we both were fans of Yar's Revenge, we're like, hey, that was great. We have very fond memories.
Yeah, that's unscripted, folks.
Yeah, that's totally unscripted. And, these games, they're not Skyrim. They're not Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, Fallout, or Grand Theft Auto. But it was what we had. Also, all of these games, they came with, well, I should say almost all of them. The box art was often, amazing. It wasn't always amazing. Sometimes they just slapped it together or something. But for the most part, they were amazing. It would help you spur your imagination. For example, Pitfall, which was, let's just say it's slightly a ripoff of Indiana Jones, was basically Indiana Jones on the front cover of this box. And you're like, oh, Indy, I can be Indy. This will be awesome.
Oh, and that was also, by the way, that was an Activision game.
Yes.
They were pretty much making the cartridges for the Atari 2600. And theirs was actually, to me, just way more exciting. Pitfall and Mega Mania.
But, it's amazing because Activision is one of the largest. They're still around today. Not only that, they're one of the largest ones. They have, in particular, Call of Duty. I love the box art, but it was just really not.
I think the guy that did some of the movie posters back then did some of that art. Drew Struzman, I believe is his name. He did the Indiana Jones.
And now that I think about it, the games that we play nowadays are even better than the box art they had on the Ataris that they tried to convince you were about to play. So it's pretty amazing. It's come a long ways. And on that note, not to get too techie or geeky, but I geeked out over this. So I'll just throw it at you and hopefully some of it'll stick. For those who know what I'm talking about, the Atari 2600 had a maximum resolution of 160 by 192. As opposed to what we have for a 4K TV, which is 3,840 by 2,160. I mean, that's unbelievable difference. So that's
like 30 times.
Yeah. It had what was impressive for the time, 128 colors as opposed to, billions that we have now. And it had, this stat blew my mind big time, 128 bytes of RAM. Okay. Not 128,000 bytes, which is 1.2K.
Right. Hence a megabyte.
Right. Which takes 1,000 of those to make 1 megabyte. So it was, you could have a Word document, open it, type in a couple of letters, close it, and it would be larger than the RAM that it had in the Atari. It just blew my mind. By contrast, the Xbox Series X that I have has 16 gigabytes, which is 125 billion times more RAM. Let that sink in.
Yeah, I'm trying to let it sink in.
It's incredible. The cartridges that we had that, could magically be made better by having some very moist, warm air blown from your lungs on top of them somehow. They had a maximum of 4,000 or 4K memory. Modern game is over 22 million times that size. So, take that for what it is, but we loved it. So many Gen Xers spent afternoons and weekends sitting in front of their parents' 27-inch cathode TV with a buddy, seeing whose janky lump of basketball player could put the square thing up in what was supposed to look like a basketball hoop.
But it was squared off. Because they didn't have any circles.
No circles because they only had 160 by 192 pixels to work with. Did we love it because it was all we had? Yes, but we did love it.
I'm a grumpy old man. I don't like everything the way it is now compared to the way it used to be. Today, everybody's spoiled rotten. When I was a boy, we didn't have these video games. We made up our own games like chew the bark off the tree. You and your friends would find a nice oak tree and you start chewing the skin off of it. And there were no winners. Everybody was a loser. It rotted your teeth and left your intestines scarred and knotted. And that's the way it was, and we liked it. We loved it.
Well, hey, Matty, since we were both surprised by the fact that we loved Yar's Revenge, was there any that you absolutely thought was a dog that you hated?
Aside from E.T., which I don't think anyone even had that one.
Yeah.
They had recently, the 40-some thousand copies found in some trash bin. But
yes,
aside from that disaster, Superman, the game, horrendous.
I forgot. Maybe I blocked it out from trauma, but I did have Superman because I was also a comic book guy.
Right. Now, if you're talking the usual blocks, because it's, sci-fi, aliens, whatever, you can kind of in your head imagine like this could be better. But when you're talking about Superman, a figure in the comics flying around as dynamic can be, and he's a block. He's a red block or a fleshy block with next to a blue block with this little sliver of red.
God, the most recognizable superhero on the planet Earth. And they couldn't even get that right.
Well, they couldn't. That's why that wasn't a good medium for that at the time.
Yeah. Just by the name. Didn't you mention something at one point about reading a review about it?
What I want to know is, out of all the stories you told me, which ones were true and which ones weren't?
My dear doctor, they're all true.
Even the lies?
Especially the lies.
Oh, yes, I did. Let's go to the reception for said game. I'll read it right off of Wikipedia's.
I dare you.
Yeah, I'm doing it. Reviewed in April 1980 by Video in its Arcade Alley column, where it was highly praised as ushering in an exciting new era for home arcades.
You're shitting me.
No, it's better. Let's see how long I can read this. The reviewer suggested that, put simply, there's no other video game remotely similar to this one. Well, they're right about that.
They're true. That's true.
Comparing the graphics and gameplay as akin to the complex simulations that have entertained computer freaks for the last decade or so.
Oh my, that person was on the take, no doubt about it. They were bought.
The game was predicted to be a hit among the true arcade addicts and to find a place in the Video Arcade Hall of Fame.
Oh my God. Brought to you by Lois Lane Incorporated.
In Video's 1982 Guide to Electronic Games, Superman was praised for surprisingly good graphics.
That is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
But yeah, so there were duds.
Yeah, there were some duds.
For damn sure.
Yeah, I mean, they could only do so much with the technology they had. Yeah, and actually, that segues to a peripheral that I had for the Atari 2600, which was called the Power Charger. I mean, how original is that? And basically, it was like a much longer version of the cartridges that you'd stick in. You'd stick that in. It must have had some kind of motherboard or something in it, but it had a cord that came out, and you'd plug that into like a tape recorder that you could just play, the one of the single little tape recorders that usually you see in movies, old movies, where they hit, record and play. So they'd put it under the desk or whatever. And you had, the games weren't on the cartridge. They were actually on cassettes. So you'd put that in, and if you didn't have it plugged in, it'd be ding, 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 sound just like modems. This is a long time before that. So that was fascinating, but that's what it read, to have these games that were much more in depth and much better. I say much, but there were limits, but they definitely were probably like 3 or 4 times.
None of this is nothing like is coming into my memory on this part, but
wow. Yeah, I had it, and it made a big difference, because it would have games that were like 4 or 5 times the size of
last year. This Atari. Now the kid wants a computer. Better idea. The supercharger from Starpath. Don't cost much. Plug it in the Atari and play supercharger computer games that cost under $15 each. And the supercharger comes with this phaser patrol game. Rocket stuff. And the kid can fight those commie mutants from space.
So in other words, it was 4 times this capacity. And let's go back to numbers again.
I don't know how it treated RAM, which was like, we mentioned not even 1 kilobyte of RAM, but the actual games that you had that were in the cartridges could hold 4K. I'd say 4K. I mean, 4,000.
I know that was
bytes.
the capacity.
Yeah. So this was, maybe 16, and which it's
My
pretty
God,
hellacious.
man.
For the time. It was unmatched. And as we know what happened later, Mattyman mentioned the ET game, that they had this great game developer that will go down in history as making what's considered the worst game ever, the ET game. But he was a great developer. Unfortunately, they were like, hey, you've got 3 weeks to create this game based off of ET property. And he didn't even know anything about it because it hadn't come out yet. So he was making this game, had nothing. It was buggy. It was shipped, and it was crap. And they made so many of it that they basically went out of business and almost sunk the entire gaming industry with it. It wasn't until in the mid 80s when Nintendo came out with the NES.
Where does the ColecoVision fall in all this?
Coleco is during this time period that we're talking in the late 70s, early 60s. What am I
early
talking about?
60s.
Sorry, folks. I'm drunk as hell. Back
to the Johnny Quest era.
That's right. I've been hitting the head with a Nerf ball too many times. No, from the late 70s to the early 80s, I remember having one friend. Matter of fact, Chris Lentz, if you remember him in one of the other stories.
Yeah.
He had a ColecoVision, and it just seemed really complex to me. It had cool games and stuff on it that were better, like Joust and stuff like that ran at higher frame rates and stuff.
Oh yeah, the Coleco version of Pac-Man was like less horrible than the Atari version.
Yes, a lot less horrible. And it had like a almost like one of those Pong dials on it, and it had a bunch of it had like a keypad and stuff. So it was way, way more advanced, but it really was more like a computer. You didn't use it for things like, word processing or anything like that. It was still a game system, but it was more like, hey, this is a computer that we've fit this controller with, and this is how you do it. That was Coleco.
No, you know what? Did anybody ever have, and even if you do know of anyone, would they cop to this? Did they have an Intellivision?
Actually, Chris Lentz had an Intellivision as well. His dad was a
he was a rich kid, huh?
He was a rich kid. His dad was a pilot for one of the airlines at the time, and he had a lot of seniority, and he did really well for himself and for them. And so, toys weren't a big deal.
This is true. What's true is that in 48 hours, you and I will have more money than God.
Conspicuous consumption. Eat it, slackers. No, that's cool.
Yeah, good for him. That's good.
Yeah. I just was like, I never knew who even had it, because I'm thinking it's this weird like disc controller thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Like it didn't have a joystick.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
First game, so it was, in my mind, it's like, this does not compute.
Yeah, it had the like I said, it had the little rotor thing on the control pad that was also a keypad. So it didn't have, there was no joysticks. It was weird.
Yeah. So in my mind, there was Atari, then there was Intellivision almost at the same time. And then a few years after that, the ColecoVision dropped.
Yep.
And that was like the biggest thing to get.
Yep.
But it didn't last long, because almost immediately after Coleco, I think it was the first Nintendo.
Yep. And Nintendo, I have a feeling that we'll be getting to Nintendo when we get around in the 80s, and that'll tell you where the world changed for young bucks like you and I.
Will you be the one to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System?
The one to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot, batteries not included. He helps you tackle even the toughest challenge. Will you be the first to raise the incredibly accurate Zapper and play games like Duck Hunt or action-packed Hogan's Alley and high-flying Kung Fu, each sold separately? Will you be the one to experience the Nintendo Entertainment System? Comes with Rob, Zapper, Control Deck, 2 controllers, Gyromite, and Duck Hunt.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But I don't even think the TVs were 27 inches, man. I think they were like 25.
You might be right. It's hard to have a scope of it because, we were smaller and I wasn't really paying attention to it. But
yeah, we bought a 58-inch TV, Hisense, built-in Roku, $300.
I know.
Just hooked it up today.
Isn't it bananas? And you just hook it up like, okay, just slap it up on the wall and plug it in. There it is working.
Yeah, not even 10 minutes later. It's like, okay, YouTube TV. Here we are.
It blows my mind. You can get, you can go to Walmart right now and get a 70-inch 4K TV for, $500. It's mind blowing because, if you compare that to the cathode TV that we just mentioned, that was, 26 inches or whatever it was, those things were like, $120 back then. So like 5 times the cost that it would be by comparison for a lot worse. I'll just put it that way. It wasn't as good as what we have now. That's for sure. And
then put yourself 40 years forward.
Phenomenal cosmic powers!
Itty bitty living space.
Well, assuming we're alive, I can't even imagine.
I hope I'm not alive in 40 years. Good Lord.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I know. Maybe I'm being a Doug Downer, but no, I don't want to be 90.
Yeah, call me home, Jesus. I'm ready to leave this rock.
I can't go. I'm too young to die and too old to eat off the kids' menu. What a stupid age I am.
But this rock does have fun things on it. And toys that we had in 1970, the number one that everybody loved, well, one of the number ones, well, probably number one in 1970 was the Nerf ball.
Hey, let's play ball.
In the house?
Sure. Hey, what are those things anyway? They're Nerf balls. Spongy foam. That doesn't hurt anything. Nerf balls.
You got your Nerf.
Not the Nerf hoop, not the Nerf football, just the Nerf ball.
Oh, that's right. They started with that before they did the Nerf football.
That's right. Like I said, it came out in 1970. I looked it up. It was $1.19, which is about $9.60 now. So it's not even $10. That's pretty good for a toy that you're going to, unless you bite it, you're going to use the hell out of it.
Let's remember it was also a good dog toy.
Yes, right.
Eventually, that's what would happen to it.
Yes. If your dog got a hold of it, you might as well just given him $10 dipped in peanut butter.
Yeah. Your Nerf football would damn sure eventually be like, okay, that's the dog's.
Yes. Now, we were both born in 1969, right? So
yes,
we don't remember when it first came out, but when I was looking up stuff, I saw that the first commercials that came out were, contained the band The Monkees.
Hey, we're the Monkees, and people say we're monkeying around, but we're too busy singing to put anybody down.
That's crazy. I didn't realize the Monkees were even around long enough for them to do a Nerf commercial. But
I know I would have thought that the Monkees would have. Well, maybe their career lasted longer because they were in litigation suing the Beatles for ripping them off.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, probably
is what I think. So it was marketed as the world's first indoor ball, and it certainly was. You could throw this thing indoors without worry about breaking anything or hurting anybody. Of course, if you had something, light or whatever on the edge of something, you could throw it hard enough to maybe knock it off. But it really was quite safe. It sold over 4 million in its first year. It was pretty amazing. It had just, it was mostly air, let's face it. And you just crush it up as small as you want, let go, it'd pop right back. You'd throw it at your brother and hit him right in the face and wouldn't matter. It was okay.
You couldn't put an eye out.
No.
Even if you wanted to, you couldn't.
You could not. No. As hard as you tried. And believe me, my brother and I, we certainly tried.
You want to punch me right now, but you won't. You want to punch me too, Brennan? You guys both look like you might want to hit me in the face. You do, I can tell. Well, why don't you do it? Why don't you punch me in the face? Punch me in the face!
So it didn't take long for him to have the brain waves to come up with the Nerf hoop, which, well, if you don't know what that is, then I really can't help you because they're ubiquitous.
No, I can't even imagine anybody's house that didn't have that.
Yeah. If you had kids, but certainly if you had boys, then you have at some point had a Nerf hoop. I mean, you can buy them at 7-Eleven. Sometimes you go in there, hey, it's a Nerf, My brother and I used to play this game nearly every night. We'd play 21 sometimes. And my brother's, when I was young, like 5 or 7, he's 5 years older than me. He'd get on his knees and, just to make it fair, still beat me because he could just throw me around like a rag doll. Once I was in my teens, though, we'd stand up and I'd take it to the hoop. I have no idea how I didn't break the door down that it was on when I was pulling my Michael Jordan-esque, jumping my impressive 6-inch vertical leap, tongue wallowing everywhere. Yeah, man. I'm a stud when it comes to basketball.
Do you know any good white basketball players? There are no good white basketball players, my friend.
Yeah, I could see it.
I can wear tennis shoes. That's my claim to fame. No, I'm horrible at it, folks.
Yeah.
I don't jump. I can fall. I've broken each arm 3 times, but anyway.
They'll have to listen to previous episodes for that.
Yes, to find out how in the world this guy break his arm so many times. The best was when we'd play horse. I loved horse. We were both trick shot masters, and my friends would come over pretty good too. We'd lay on our backs usually, bouncing. I guess if we were feeling, particularly lazy teenagers, we'd bounce the ball off of 2 walls and swoosh, nothing but net. We'd have to call them too, by the way. We'd have to say, all right, I'm going to bounce it off this wall, hit the roof, come down, hit the wall, and bounce into the thing, nothing but net. And if you didn't do it, it didn't count.
Off the floor, off the scoreboard, off the bang board, no rim.
We'd play for hours and hours. It was great bonding with my brother that way, and have nothing but fond memories with it. I'm sure there were millions of people, like you said, other Gen Xers who've been out there who have similar experiences to what we had with the Nerf hoop. What about you and Jeff?
I was going to say we had a version of that, but it was called throwing a volleyball as hard as you could at each other and dodging it in our bedroom. And only there was a skit where one of us would play the part of Satan, and we would just That's
not a real stretch, folks.
Yeah, we would conjure up like celebrities, and they're like, what am I doing here? You need to do whatever your terrible impression of the celebrity is. And Satan is basically like, if this hits you, you go to hell. And so not only are you dodging around the ball, not getting hit, but you're having to maintain in character as whatever celebrity, whether it's Andy Rooney or
that is the greatest story I've ever heard in my life. Rochester, I hope I don't get sent to hell for getting hit in the nuts with a volleyball.
Yeah. So that's what we did. And
that's awesome.
And we're throwing it. I mean, we're throwing it. It's hitting the walls.
Right.
The only, we had paneling. We didn't have sheetrock. So it's not like we're doing any real damage.
But it was loud.
But it was loud. I mean, I'm surprised my mom didn't run back there, like my stepdad, and like, we're going to beat the shit out of you. What are you doing? They just let us do it.
I'm going to beat the shit out of you. You can't beat the shit out of me. I'm Jack Nicholson.
Freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Exactly.
What the hell? I just leave you kids here.
Yeah. Yeah. Who do you think you are, Satan? Okay, I'm backing out of the room now.
I am Beelzebub himself. Thank you, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah, that was our bit. Yes. Yeah. Satan and the other person, some celebrity having to dodge this ball that's being thrown as hard as you can.
Well, I think we've found the first theme of our first little skit that we're ever going to make on the show here eventually, because that's too good to not do. So after, I didn't break the door, but after breaking our 25th hoop, my parents were like, screw it, we're not buying any more. So all we had left was the ball. My cousin Vincent, who I've mentioned before, he and I made up this game where I'd stand on one end of the hallway and he'd stand on the other. And I guess much like you guys with your volleyball, although we were using a Nerf ball, we'd take turns throwing the ball at each other. And then whatever got hit, whether it was a limb, a foot, a leg, or whatever, that was out. So you couldn't use it anymore. So if you got hit in the left leg, you'd have to jump on your right leg to keep staying in the game. You could fall down. Both legs were out. You could lay on your butt and do it. But when you got in the head, when you got hit in the head, you were automatically done. So we'd have to restart a new game with it. Just making up little stuff that we, have fond memories of. And
so so your left leg is hit. You can't stand on it. You're hopping around. Okay. Yes. And then if your left arm is hit, then you can't use. So really, you become like the Black Knight and Monty Python, right?
Yes.
I command you, as King of the Britons, to stand aside.
I move for no man.
So be it. Now stand aside, worthy adversary.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch? Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
Well, what's that then?
I've heard worse.
You liar.
Come on, you pansy.
Just a flesh wound.
And you've lost.
Yes.
Okay.
It was fun,
Yeah. I like that.
I mean, that's a hell of a lot of fun for a toy that costs less than $10. So
it's like, hey, here's the most basic of toys. That's 10% of it, plus the 90% of what kids just make up.
Yep. That's a sign of a good toy, I think, when you could make up your own things with it once you've broken it enough.
I think if we could go back in time, if we could just imagine what siblings were doing with the ball and cup, how they were trying to make that more interesting.
Right. We could go back in time and investigate that.
If only we could have a skit based around that.
Yes.
The screen is going blurry as we go back in time.
We'll get to that, folks. Trust me. We're working our way into this. Of course, in time, eventually, the Nerf football came around and it became king, as we know, as it still is, really. It's one of the king of the toys. As with the balls today, it's definitely something that you did not want to play indoors. It's not, something soft like a volleyball, for example. You were definitely going to break something. While the Nerf football was soft, our backyard football games, they were not. Occasionally we'd play 5-on-5 or something like that if we had enough people, but usually we didn't. And mainly it was a game that we called Smear the Queer. Before you get all triggered, this was queer as in the different one, not as in homosexual.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows?
Yes, like in the old days when you'd say, "Oh, that's queer."
Right, exactly.
Yes.
And besides, we didn't name it. It wasn't a name that I came up with, and really, honestly, didn't even think of the world that way. Honestly, I guess. I'm like,
we were innocent.
Yeah, I was like
innocence.
10 or 11 years old. I'm not thinking about that stuff. So we'd have a group of guys, or if any of the neighborhood girls were brave enough or stupid enough to play with us. So you'd have one guy was chosen from all the other people, and he'd go about 10 yards in front of everybody. He'd have his football, toss it over his shoulder, kind of to the group, and the group would fight in a scrum to get this ball. When they'd get the ball, they'd take off. The other 9 or 10 or however many people would try to tackle them, which, often happened, obviously 1 on 10, but, it was pretty rough. You get stomped to the ground and whatever. And whoever had the ball and got tackled, well, that group would stay right there, and he'd walk 10 yards in front of them and look the opposite way and throw the ball over his shoulder, and everybody'd fight for it again. And the game would continue until somebody got it, took off, and made it to the goal line.
Harmon will probably try to squib it, and he does. Ball comes loose, and the Bears have to get out of bounds. Rogers along the sideline, another one. They're still in deep trouble at midfield. They tried to do a couple of... The ball is still loose as they get it to Rogers. They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone. He's going into the end of the Bears. The Bears have won. The Bears have won. Oh, my God! The most amazing, sensational, dramatic, heart-rending, exciting, thrilling finish in the history of college football.
Did you ever play Smear the Queer?
I mean, the name is definitely familiar.
Oh, yeah, you had the retina thing.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm just saying, no. I mean, I remember as a kid, we played some football type game, and it was called that, and I'm sure... I shouldn't have been playing it because, my retina thing.
Yeah.
But I recall something along those lines.
Yeah. I look back at 53 years old, and I'm like, man, that they were so fun and it was wild. But, you're made of rubber, right? When you're like 10, 11, 12 years old. Now at 53, I'm like, I'd take one of those hits and I'd be like, all right, buddy. You guys, I'll just watch y'all. All right. So I've had.
Are you kidding? Right now, you'd be trepidatious to pick up a nickel on the floor. Like, I better bend the right way.
Talk about Smear the Queer. No, I kid, folks.
Oh. Who else but Van?
You made a comment about bending over. It was well timed. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right,
that.
well.
Anything could crawl in right off the street.
But anyway, whenever someone would cross the goal line, they won. And then we just, go the other direction. Some guys wore boots, some had cleats, some with regular sneakers. There were no pads or helmets, of course. There were sticker plants, I remember, that were all around.
Sticker plants?
Well, they were like,
they had thorns?
Weeds that had thorns, yeah. And, they looked like dandelions, but they didn't have the dandelion part. And you'd follow.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why everybody would wear some form of shoe. But if you got tackled on it, man, it was going to hurt. And, their neighborhood, everybody knew everybody, but it was, 10-year-olds playing against 18-year-olds. So it was fun, but tough, no doubt.
Yeah, there was no age divisions here, folks.
No. And I remember when I was older, we'd take it easier on the smaller kids. We weren't trying to kill them, but, it was definitely not a place for wimps. The football may have been soft, but to play that game, you couldn't be.
In my moment of glory, I am the cream, the cream of the crop. And there is no one that does it better than the Macho Man Randy Savage. On balance, off balance, doesn't matter. I'm better than you are, yeah.
Now I'm going to bring up something that'll trigger your memory.
Okay.
If you left the Nerf football outside,
it got wet.
Mm-hmm. That thing was easily like 10 times as heavy as it was when it was just dry, and those would be fun.
Easily 10 times.
You throw that bitch and you let's say you didn't do a good job of catching it and it caught you on the face. And the water kind of squeezes out on your face.
Well, even if you caught it with your hands, it could pull your wrist back. I mean, the thing was, it must have weighed 13 pounds probably when it was full of water. Now today, of course, everybody knows that Nerf. I mean, they still have football and the hoop, of course, but their most popular toys are dart guns, which are fun. My kids have had quite a few in their day, and they're awesome. I gotta admit, I wished I had them. I'm a bit jealous. I wish I had them when I was a kid, but if we'd have had them when we were kids, they certainly would have had hard plastic tips that were probably sharpened to a fine point, and hell, might have even been coated in feces to ensure infection. You know how it was.
Yeah. Right? If it's not botulism on this, why release it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that kid may have a detached retina, but this other kid literally lost his eye. That's a toy for you, folks.
Yeah.
Y'all shoot your eye out! Y'all shoot your eye out!
And speaking of losing an eye, let's lose a Wii and cut this episode there.
You got it, old buddy, old pal. Keep your one good eye out for the continuing epic journey into the past when we drop Christmas Toys Part 3. I know what 9-volt batteries taste like.
Until then, remember, beating your baby alive doll with a pet rock is a cry for help. Gen X style.
Peace out.